pardon.
Do better.
You talking to yourself? Is that a self-pep talk?
Yes, it is. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Yo, this is the Bub and Bob Show, where we have rare conversations with compelling Christians. At least that's the goal. I am Bub Coons, right over there behind the glass, touching dials, and he's staring at me intimately now. Bob Atosian.
I am touching dials.
Yes.
And
you're not really doing anything, though, right?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Got the headphones on.
I'm waiting for you to say something really smart.
Well, you're going to be waiting a long time, my friend, but
Yes.
thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
It's been a 30-year journey with you.
Are you done with me?
I don't know. Are you done talking?
No, I'm not. That's why I was just
No,
baiting
please.
you.
I mean, say something.
How's this all going?
Like this whole show?
Yeah, the whole show.
You know, it's going pretty good. I think a lot of people may not know that this is a nonprofit, right? And this is how you and I support our families.
Yes.
So any kind of donation helps us have more shows like this and put other content out. So we say that unashamedly.
Yes.
I think it's the first time we've ever said it. But
It is. It's about time.
See how unashamed we are? We've only said it once out of 40 episodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's nothing like you were telling Ed. What else would we be doing? This is what we do. This is what we're called to do, and this is what. Yeah. And this is hopefully how we feed our families.
Well, no one else will hire us, so we hired ourselves.
That's true. We wanted no staff and no oversight.
Yes.
How are we doing?
We're surviving. That's okay. But the ministry is actually doing amazing things. Some of the clips that we're putting out there, we had like 15,000 impressions and 2,000 views on these small little clips that I think are making a huge difference in people's lives, that get these pieces of inspiration or these challenging things or these convicting things through Instagram or Facebook, and they flick through it, and we're getting some great comments, and God's working,
Yes.
We're just exposing God.
Can you imagine, like last August?
Well, when there was zero of anything?
When we had nothing.
God is faithful.
Yes.
That's good. And speaking of that, our first guest is a really gifted singer-songwriter, but I have to say, beyond that stuff, this is one of those people's lives that I've looked into and followed for a long time, who's been incredibly inspirational. He's taught me a lot about how to serve God and how to remain faithful in really tough times. This is the indomitable and fearlessly faithful.
Abominable?
Can I finish?
No. Well, you have to explain these things for us
No,
listeners.
people need to look up. Can I finish my intro?
No. Abominable?
You remember you asked me what's the thing that frustrates me the most?
I already know.
It's interruptions.
Me.
Oh, yeah, I should just say Bob, but I mean interruptions. Here it is.
Okay.
I can only say this stuff once. You want me to start over?
Ladies and gentlemen.
The indomitable.
The indomitable.
And fearlessly faithful Ed Nilsen.
Fantastic.
Welcome to the show. Gosh, you had to be patient just to sit through that.
There was like a flight to Phoenix, man.
It takes a long time just to say
jet lag at all.
Some of us like the scenic route.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I did not say abominable. It's a very different word, indomitable.
Okay, but I don't know what it means.
People will look it up, and the smart ones already know.
Play hangman with it. Hang yourself.
No one will get that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you being here. I'd love to go back and I want to talk about the time that you became a believer, what your life was before, and then how you actually became a Christian.
Yeah. I will, if I can just get on the table for the listeners, watchers, that I have Parkinson's.
Yes.
So if you see me shake, that's why.
Yes.
So something like this requires me to think and to think. And sometimes when I think a lot.
You shake more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this doesn't happen when you sleep, right? Does Parkinson go?
That's right.
That's the strangest thing.
It is the strangest thing. So when I really have to engage like this,
that's when it happens.
Like, Lord, that's when I need it to engage the least.
Yes.
You could have blamed it on the camera guys for shaking the camera.
That's true. That's true.
No,
yeah. Earthquake in California.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, so I grew up in Carlsbad.
Okay.
I was my mom's youngest of her 6 kids. 2 marriages in there for her.
Okay.
Dysfunctional, just to start with that and end with that. She was a manic depressive, alcoholic, drug abuser. My dad was great, was in the Marines, retired. Drug user himself.
Wow.
There was lots of mental illness going on. My mom, in some type of wisdom, decided to put us in Catholic school.
Wow. Okay.
So I learned about God's. Although I can't remember what they were talking about, I don't remember.
Latin?
It wasn't in Latin. I remember we'd have to go to Mass.
Okay.
And I remember being baptized as a Catholic when I was, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade.
Okay.
And I had to go see who I thought was the Pope, but they told me, no, he's just the priest.
Yeah, he's a couple of layers down from the big guy. Yeah.
And then, and so it was about 6th grade. My mom went into a period of about 7 trips in and out of the mental hospital.
Wow.
Over about a 2.5-year period. And just to sum it up, the height of it was, a couple attempts at suicide. One of them, slit a wrist. I come home and my brother's sitting in the chair and eating a sandwich. And I said, "Where's Mom?" He goes, "Oh, well, she's at the hospital." And so...
Wow. How old were you at that time?
Probably about 13, 12 or 13.
Okay.
Wow.
And so in the midst of that, I became angry with God and decided to kind of turn my back on the faith that I had at that point in time, which was found through worshiping in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And I would go to worship. I had a paper out. Sunday mornings I'd drive up to the church and pull in, ink all over my hands, and parts of the Mass I loved and was really blessed. But I was praying for my mom and praying for healing, and it didn't happen. And so I said, God, I'm checking out.
Yeah.
And I remember being in 7th or 8th grade when we were doing confirmations, and I told the nuns I didn't want to be confirmed. And they said, "Why don't you?" And I said, "Well, I don't think I'd know what I'd be doing." And I said, "I don't think they know what they're doing, the people that were getting confirmed."
Yeah.
Which was kind of a arrogant, cocky thing to say. I guess.
You're mad at God. Your perspective's already a little off. But it's like...
But there was a family, a Catholic family, a lot of kids, and they knew that there wasn't much food in our house. So they said, "Hey, you come to our house for the summer." This was before my freshman year in high school. And so I ate at their house the whole summer, which was great having food.
Yeah.
And then one of them, when I became a freshman, she was in the choir in high school. She says, "Hey, you like to play guitar and sing? Come sing in the choir." And I'm like, "Choir's for geeks. I'm not singing in any choir."
I play guitar, baby.
That's right. I'm going to be a rock star,
Yeah.
And so, but I was in this drafting class, and about the last day you could possibly change classes, I thought, being in a music rehearsal about this time sounds kind of fun. So I changed all my classes to the chagrin of my counselor, and ended up in this mixed chorus. And the first time I get there, they start singing "Mama, Mama, Mama," and I'm like, I've just made the biggest mistake of my whole entire life.
When can I pull out the guitar?
That's right. But bit by bit, I was won over by the teacher, an excellent music teacher. Wow. I thought I was bringing my knowledge of music to him instead. We were singing
like every good 12 or 13-year-old.
That's right.
All the knowledge.
Right. We were singing Handel's Messiah, Hallelujah. And I'm thinking to myself, I know this. This is on a Yes Live recording. It's Rick Wakeman's piece. So I told my director, "Hey, I know this." And he was like looking at me like, "You're just such a fool." Yeah. So that turned out to be a lifesaver for me, to be involved in choir and music. Yeah. And from that, when I was a senior, a lot of, even now, parents will strategize, where do we put our kids, pay college.
Sure.
Whomever, you're strategizing from the time they're in kindergarten where they're going to go to school.
How to get them out.
Yeah. Mine was, I was in high school thinking, my goal was to be at the beach by noon by the time I was a junior.
Yeah,
get out of school.
you
know what I mean?
He still does that mid-show. He just disappear and go down to the beach. But anyway.
But then I'd realize I'd be at the beach by myself, so I realized some of my friends. That's right. Some of my friends were talking about going to college, and so I thought I better start thinking about college. Yeah. So I went to my music teacher and said, I want to study music. He goes, "I think that's great." I said, "I don't know where to go." He goes, "Why don't you go to Fullerton?" I said, "Great." Like 3-minute conversation. Yeah. My life was changed. And so I needed to find a place to live at Cal State Fullerton. And they had no dorms at the time. So my crazy mom, who for a period of us living in high school, actually herself was attending Cal State or San Diego State.
Okay.
And was living in the dorms. My 55-year-old mother left me and my brother at the house to take care of ourselves. My brother quit going to school.
And Dad's completely gone?
Dad is. That's a whole other story. Okay. He's living locally, but he's mailing us the alimony check, and I take the alimony check, get 7 money orders, pay the bills, and then take a few bucks down to the grocery store with my brother to buy groceries.
So you're raising the family,
buying
the groceries,
and we're arguing, and I'm like saying, "Louis, we need some pasta," and he says, "No, man, it's Rocky Road ice cream." Cereal. We'd have these arguments.
Sure.
I mean, literally, he'd be
toilet paper. You're like going for
so we'd end up.
Staples.
So there was always cereal at the house, and even today, you go to my house.
Growing up on cereal,
there's a good supply of cereal. Yeah. So I remember talking with my mom, who at this time had been in college for a while, and she says, "Well, you got to find a place to live up at Fullerton because there's no dorms." Yep. So I'm going up back and forth making trips, and it's there's no internet, so you see little signs on the wall.
Sure.
And as I'm watching these notices of where to live, I'm thinking I'm running out of options. Then I realize there's these Christian dorms that are across the street, but I hate Christians at the time. Yeah. I just don't like Christians because in my they're wrong. I don't know why they're wrong, but I just
they're the
hate.
Only ones with dorms.
That's right. So after about the 4th or 5th trip up there, they're about to start. School's about to start. My mom says, "Where are you living?" I said, "I don't know." She goes, "Well, what do you got?" And then I finally confided in, I finally told her, I hadn't told her there were Christian dorms. I said, well, there's this, that, and then there's these Christian dorms. And she says, well, do they have a cafeteria? I said, yeah. She goes, that's where you want to live. You're going to want to eat. So my crazy manic depressive schizophrenic.
She knows where to go.
Yeah. And I thought, Mom is right.
Yep.
So I moved into the dorms. But before that, I had just, the Lord was working on me, and I ended up breaking my wrist in a volleyball accident. So I show up to school with my arm fully encased in a cast, and basically just getting humbled to the point where I'd actually listen to the truth about the truth. And so in the dorms, it was kind of a live hall. And if somebody was knocking on the door across your door, it sounded like they were knocking on your door. So you would
open your door.
Yeah. So I did that about 5 or 6 times. And the guy, it was always the same guy at the same place. And he finally turns around to me. He says, you do that all the time.
Yeah.
And that started a conversation. And he shared the gospel with me.
Wow.
And for about 3 hours, I asked him questions. He asked me questions. But by the time it was done, the impossible happened. The God I hated, the faith I hated, the thing I couldn't stand that I was willing to fight for. All of a sudden now I confessed that I was a sinner. I confessed and believed that God himself was the ultimate God and judge. And I repented of my sins, acknowledged them, with the trade-off being, the forgiveness would come if I acknowledged Jesus as the Son of God and Lord. And I did, and it was through the gift and the power of the Holy Spirit,
of course,
that I was saying these words that I just couldn't believe I was saying, and that changed everything.
Yeah.
From then on, nothing has been the same.
It's fabulous, the providence of that, right? Where
Yeah.
God forces you to end up at the Christian dorm.
Yeah, right.
Has a guy knock on the door several times.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And
no other guy probably would have done at the time, and you were ready. I love that. It's just.
And I ended up I talked with this guy afterwards because he was very well prepared. And I said, how many other guys have you done this to? He goes, about a couple hundred.
Oh,
so I said, if anybody else believed, he goes, no, you're the first one.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So that guy is faithful to the end, and just and I hope that some of those other 200 have come through since then. But that's amazing.
Just getting it to the point of where it's like, and then afterwards I would meet people. Well, first of all, I'd go back home back to Carlsbad, and some of my old friends from high school would say, Eddie, I heard you're a Christian. Are you a Christian? I'm like, yeah. Oh my,
Yeah.
And then I'd meet people and they would say, oh, I prayed for you.
Wow.
So I realized then and there I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It was all through the providence of God. And he used all these situations that had occurred in my life, a lot of pain that had happened. And I just had forgiveness in my heart for my mom. I had forgiveness in my heart for my dad. I had love for my father for the first time. I gave him a Bible. Somebody gave me, Scott, the guy who shared the gospel with me, gave me a Bible. And it was really the first thing I ever read because I wanted to read.
Yeah.
I mean, I could read, but I hated reading.
Sure.
Unless it was a sports page with, or baseball cards or, stats.
Yeah.
And so now I started reading the Gospel of John. It was like, I'm in it. I started reading all of the epistles, and it's like, I'm in it. And I just read it and read it and read it. And it's like, I couldn't. Good. I thought, well, I now I get it why people like to read. You can actually learn something.
Yeah. And things can actually change your entire perspective in your life.
His name was Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, well, look in that camera and say hello. Thank you that he's right
there. Scott Butler. Brother, wherever you're at, man, thank you. And God bless you.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Thank you. And we all have that same testimony. There's always one or two people that pop up right when you need it. So when did you get into I guess you were always wanted to be a musician, always wanted to be the rock star. You become a believer. What does that change the course of your thinking and what you should do with music?
I mean, it really did. I mean, I was so Fullerton was a great choral program.
Okay.
I was getting kind of my rear end kicked in the process. Like the first thing we sang as a freshman. I mean, so I show up with a cast on my arm.
Yeah.
And I'm in this group called the University Singers, which is like all music majors, most of them vocal majors, and I'm like one of the few underclassmen. It's a group of 64. And the first piece we do is by Bela Bartok in Hungarian.
Yeah.
Like we've all sung a lot of Hungarian.
Sure. I know it from heart. Yeah.
So you take 64. It's for double choir. So you take 64 voices, split them in two. So you have 32 and 32. Then you take each one of those and subdivide the parts. All of a sudden, I'm like one of 4 guys. With 3 other tenor parts, and and I'm just my head spinning.
Yeah, when do I come in?
Yeah.
When do I sing?
And I'm like, can I go back to Sweet Baby James or something with a guitar? None of that here, man. And so
a lot of chicks in choir, though, huh?
Yeah. Well, the guitar always came in handy for that as well.
That's where Bob comes in.
That's right. Yeah, you'd be in the tenor section, and you'd catch the soprano or two. So Roxanne,
how you doing?
Roxanne, Princess. It was always you that I had in mind.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Is that where you met her?
No. So I was I mean, ultimately at Pacific Christian, I met her.
Okay.
Living in the dorms, but at Cal State. So when I became a Christian, the people in the dorms said, "Do you play worship?" And I'm like, "Well, what's that?" So they started taking me. They being whoever had a car, they said, "You want to go to church?" So I'd go to church, and I was just on fire. I mean, I didn't know what a dead church was.
Yeah.
All I knew was if I was alive and if they were preaching the word, I was alive.
Yeah.
And so, but there was definitely I would say a challenge to integrate the new faith with that study of the classical music.
Yeah.
And so I ultimately took a little break from Pacific. The short story, long story. Did a few semesters at Cal State Fullerton. Did a few semesters at Pacific Christian College, and went back and finished at Cal State Fullerton just to be done with it because it was a lot cheaper than the Christian,
get it done.
than the private school. And in the process, married Roxanne. So she and I met, and then we got married when we were about 20. So we did the journey together.
You're the same age? You guys are pretty close to the same age.
Yeah. So we've been married 36
That's
years.
Amazing.
So yeah.
That's so good. And how did you meet her? How did that happen?
Well, I was dating her girlfriend at the time, her best friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're still best friends.
Okay.
But I don't remember meeting her for the first time.
Okay.
But then we went on a ski trip with a bunch of, her dad had a house up in Utah.
Okay.
So a bunch of us went up there, and she had a snowmobile accident. And had to be airlifted to the hospital down in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And so the buddies I came with had a 2-seater Opel. I had no car. They had to be back to work, and they said, "Eddie, man, sorry, dude, we're leaving you in Utah. We're out of here." And so I ended up basically, I did have my guitar. My guitar was always with me. So Roxanne was in the hospital for like a week, and I would just, I'd go and hang out in the hospital. I'd go up and down the hall singing to people and playing songs, and basically that kind of forged a relationship.
And then that was it. You kind of
did she
like you right away, or push you away and go, "You're not my guy"?
No, I think she liked me right away. Right. Yeah, I think I liked her right away.
That's those are the good stories.
We had a band. I mean, that was kind of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we could be I could play guitar, she could sing, and I could sing, and so it's like, what more do you need?
That's great.
So even if everybody else fires us, we still got each other.
Yeah, that's what I think of Bob. So then, I mean, when I met you, I think we've known each other 25 years or something.
Yeah.
At least when you came around Coast Hills, and Bob and I worked at Coast Hills, and the first time there was a huge influence on me is when I heard you and Roxanne sing at Coast Hills. And I'm like, who is this guy? It's very different. It's like reminded me of a John Denver kind of meets James Taylor, and I was like, I haven't really heard this kind of music or this sound in a church. Everything was for such a specific kind of way in those days, and you guys broke through. And I remember sitting there and just being endeared with the two of you. And I went up and introduced myself, and you probably don't remember that. We just said hi, and then we ended up doing. I kept hearing stuff about your life, a little bit about even your past with your mom and dad. I'm like, oh man, that's amazing where these two people are. And then you go forward, I don't know, 13 or 14 years when we knew each other, and you guys had already had Drew. Yeah. Right? You had your son, and I've told you this in private before, but one of the most moving things ever that when I opened the show, even saying that you the way you modeled and the way you and Roxanne are faithful to the Lord in these Job-like circumstances, because I mean, when I think of Job, I think of you. I don't know why, but it's just there's a faithfulness to it, and the way that God constructs certain things. But let's get into the Drew story a little bit, because it's and I'll say what you said on this video that I did with you a long time ago that actually challenged my own faith and everything. But so you and Roxanne had Drew.
Yeah. So all along, I guess I'll start by saying my deepest desire was to have a family. Yeah. Have my own family, and so when we finished school, Roxanne and I was like, okay, let's have kids. Yeah. And so we had Drew, and then I remember a call at about 7 weeks. Roxanne had taken Drew to a well check, and she called and said he's in acute heart failure, and I'm taking him to the doctor, and you got to meet me there. So that was I didn't really I didn't realize what acute meant really at the time, but I could hear it in her voice. This is not good. Yeah. So that started a long process of it just kind of changed everything. Yeah. So he was born with multiple heart defects. He was going to need multiple surgeries. They gave us the option early on. You can choose surgeries, you can choose a transplant, or you can choose nothing. Yeah. And let him die. And so we said, well, we're going to choose surgery, and we'll just see what happens. And so he had a surgery at 7 weeks, and then an open heart at 3.5, another open heart at 4.5, open heart at 9.5, 10.5, and then finally went in for the transplant at about 13, and that's when he passed. But in that process, the Lord was gracious and kind and gave him a spirit of it's hard to describe. It's like you have a child, and stupidly I think he'll be like me, And then as I watch him grow up, I'm like, he's nothing like me. Right. And praise the Lord.
Thank God.
I mean, we would go out and play baseball. So he couldn't be in daycare. So I would, I would be working nights, and Roxanne would be working days, and we'd literally trade off. So he and I would go to the park, and I'm like, well, let's throw the ball, And I'd be with him and saying, okay, there's 3 rules. Don't swing the bat around other people, because I did when I was a kid. Hit a kid in the head.
Smack the guy.
Yeah. I said, don't, there's
we always lead from our fears.
Yeah, that's right. There's no crying in baseball, of course, and there was one other I can't remember. But he came up to me one day at about age 5, and he says, Dad, I know another rule. I said, what's that? He goes, winning.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, whose kid are you? And so he just had a fighting spirit about him. And so to this day, that's one of the things that I will always take with me. But yeah, the story was and is we had 2 courses to choose. Some doctors said, make him a reader, keep him quiet. Another doctor and his doctor said, let him be a kid.
Let him live, yeah.
And just, and you don't know what's going to happen, but here's what could happen. And so we did as best we could.
Yeah.
And within the context of everything that we did, he would always do it to the best he could. He pitched in Little League, and he loved it. And but when the surgeries would come, it was always conversations. He and I would have big conversations in prayer time at night over the course of his life. And one of them, when he was, I think about 9, the one when he was 9.5 is the one where I leveled with him, because he was old enough to understand. And I said, hey, when you wake up, you're either going to see your doctors or you're going to see God.
Yeah, that was the line that got me.
Yeah.
When you said that, when I heard that the first time, and I was recording you and Roxanne, and you said that, and I was like, man, what a beautiful and difficult, amazing thing to say to your son. But the truth is, he's now with the Lord. So you were right. I mean, it's one of 2 choices, and that's amazing.
What's interesting is that was like a little bit. He still was going to have a couple more surgeries, but it was almost like the words coming out of my mouth to prepare myself for that time when I would actually have to believe that.
Yeah.
And the time that he did pass. Still, there's moments that will still wake me up at night.
Oh, yeah.
And Roxanne and I have learned to live with grace with each other as we continue to remember those times and the things that we did that we wish we could have done differently. But again, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who demonstrated his grace even to a nation that didn't deserve it, and even to people that don't deserve it, who calls us as sinners and demonstrates his own love for us, and that while we were yet sinners, he gave us his only Son, is gracious even in moments like that. Yeah. And so, as Drew was, he was in the hospital being evaluated for a heart transplant, and it was Thanksgiving morning, and just the previous night he had a heart cath to prep him. And another interesting point is that in the bed next to him was a kid named Brandon, who was also on the transplant list, and Brandon was 15, the same blood type, O positive.
Wow.
You're not supposed to mingle with the other transplant victims, because it's not like a transplant comes in every day. Okay, you get one.
You get it, and you can see the kid next to you get it.
Yeah, so it's almost like, you want Brandon to get it because he's been there longer, but now they're starting to become buds, and they really don't want you, but it's just happening because they're teenage boys. And
you want 2 hearts to show up at the same time.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
So what went down is on Thanksgiving morning, I just kind of woke up early, and I thought, I need to go see him right now. Yeah. And so, and I preface that by saying the doctors, they say, if you sign on for the transplant, you got to take care of yourself. You can't always live here. You're going to have to get some sleep because it's going to be a long process.
Sure.
You're going to have to live normal lives, even so you might as well start now. So they would send us home. And so I went there the very next morning, and I walked into ICU, and I came around the curtain, and he looked at me and he said, I missed you. And I said, I missed you too, buddy.
Yeah.
And I could tell right away that it was not good.
Yeah.
It was not a good night. And I could tell right away that he knew something was wrong, and his doctor said, and you know, they had like the not the A team, the B team, but like the D team on. It was Thanksgiving morning, and the nurse was not very good. Yeah. And I said, I just watched him, and he was kind of groaning in pain. Wow. And the doctor said, he's refused pain medication. He doesn't want to take anything. Wow. Mm-hmm. And then they called in the other doctors, the big guns, so to speak, and they said, you got to go. They told me I had to go. So I drove back to where we were staying, and I told Roxanne, I said, we got to go. And she got up, and she started to get herself ready. I said, Roxanne, we got to go. Yeah. And so we went back to the hospital, and by this time, he was already in cardiac arrest, and they wouldn't let us in. They wouldn't let her in. Brandon was out in the hall. And then about 45 minutes later, they came back and said what happened, that he was in cardiac arrest for about 45 minutes. Wow. Longer than...
Still fighting.
Yeah, longer than anybody that... they said they expected him to be brain dead. They said it's obvious he needs a heart transplant, but they can't put him on the heart. Everything was just to get on the heart transplant list. And but I said, I want to see him. Yeah. And they said, are you sure it's a surgery site? Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, I want to see him. So I went in, and there's tubes everywhere. And there's blood on the ground, and there's a guy mopping it up. And I just went over to him and put my hand on him and said, I love you. And so that started a process of waiting now for the heart transplant. He was eventually put on the list. A heart did become available. They tried to get it to him. It didn't work. But he was just so sick. Yeah. He was just so sick. Yeah. And in the meantime, what I saw was God was mobilizing the church. That God was not going to take him until he was ready to take him. But I remember that morning, you cited Job, and when the doctor came and told me what had happened, I went in the bathroom and I just bawled my head out. And the only scripture that came to mind was, "Where were you when I hung the stars? Where were you when I hung the stars? Where were you when I hung the stars?" I'd look in the mirror. Where were you? And it's like God's like, he was mine to begin with. He was mine now. Yeah. Who are you to say he's your son? He's my son. Yeah. And I said, this is not fair. You're God. You could change things as you want to, whenever you want to. Yeah. And he said, I could have, but I didn't. Right. And my son could have taken himself down, but he didn't, even though he had the power. Yeah. So you're going to have to go through this. And that was hard. Yeah. Because in the midst of every dad moment, you want to fix it.
Of course. Yeah.
Whoever is hurting, whatever's happening, especially if it's your own child, you say, I got this. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have any of it. Yeah. And it was the most powerless I ever felt. And anyway, it's weird, like emotions like this. I mean, it's been, such a long, it's been 2002, and the emotions, they're still just like right on the surface, and I start talking about them.
Of course.
And that's what happened. So. Yeah.
I know how hard those things are. Thanks for going there and sharing that. I think it's incredibly important. There's tons of people that are going to hear this, and just like me, how you encouraged me without even you knowing it and inspired me. People looking in are going through some really, really terrible times, and that'll speak, because those used to be my favorite chapters in the Bible, Job 38, 39. Yeah. When God answers back and says those things, and he goes through a crash course on who he is, and so I still love those chapters, but that's the crazy thing about the stats when parents lose a kid, most people end up divorcing.
Yeah.
How did you guys hold all this together? I mean,
I appreciate you asking that, and it's. Our pastor at the time actually called and either left a message or talked with Roxanne and gave her the stat that 95% of parents with a single child end up divorcing. And I remember I was in a men's Bible study, and I told him that stat, and this one guy said, yeah, Ed, but the people that pray together, they stay together 100% of the time. And so I got schooled, and I realized that I needed to continue to be schooled by my Christian brothers around me, you know. and that openness to learn and to keep learning.
Yeah.
And so I realized, okay, there's going to be hope.
Yeah.
And so we had wonderful friends at the time. I mean, when I say wonderful friends, we were just blessed beyond with our Christian brothers and sisters in the church. And but one family in particular had lost a child, and they mentored us through it. I mean, it was kind of thing where you're in the hospital and your son dies, and the first thing they give you is a form that says, "What do you want to do with the body?"
Yeah.
And it harkens back to the scriptures about when Jesus dies and the care that was taken for the body, and how Joseph of Arimathea goes and asks for the body, and they prepare it. I mean, there's this practical side of
get things done.
It's not like I'm going to put it in the trash and waste management is going to come and recycle it.
Right.
And so this Jim Ashby was the guy I called, and so he and his wife Donna had lost a daughter, and so Jim was there, and even through the process, and about a year into it, he had adopted. He and his wife had adopted a couple of kids from Eastern European countries, and so he gave me the proverbial kick in the rear and said,
"So I'm not over.
Eddie, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you and Roxanne doing? There's more parenting to be done."
Yep.
And so with their encouragement, we signed on with an agency in Fullerton.
Yep.
And we ended up almost 2 years to the day adopting 2 teenage girls from Russia. So talk about changing it up, man.
So you changed it up, and again though, not everything works beautifully with the 2 adopted kids.
No, and naively I walk into this thing. I mean, I was always kind of successful early on in sports. Like I always hit third and played second base. So I just had this mentality. I'm Ed Nilsen. What can I not do? I'm going to be your starting second baseman and
Put
hit
me
third.
I'm ready. Yeah,
I'll hit
anything.
like 320 and I'll be the clutch guy. So none of that came true. So as soon as
it rarely does, quite honestly. I mean,
but when we were in Russia, Roxanne, again, the whole thing was just like this learning process. So even in Russia, one of the daughters decided she didn't want to be adopted.
Okay.
And so, but we had to make a decision at that point in time. What do we want to? Are we going to continue this process?
Right.
And it was a Genesis moment. It was like Abraham, or not? Sorry, not Abraham. Adam. And Adam and Eve sinned. And Adam, they're trying to flee the garden. God's like, "Hey, where are you going?"
Yeah.
I mean, somebody has to initiate unconditional love.
Yep.
And so I told Roxanne, we have to be the ones to initiate and demonstrate unconditional love. It's never been done. And so here we are in Russia.
Yeah. With these 2 girls.
It's not like we can go home.
Yeah. Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
So we came here to do this, and even though one of them says no, God sent his son for the whole world.
So did you have the papers to bring them home, and then they said no then, or was it
there was a first trip, trip. Yeah. So one of them said no. So I ended up, actually, we went, when she said no, we went to the orphanage, and it was like, it's all in Russian, obviously, of course. But all I hear is like this yelling and screaming of, everybody. And then I finally said, the daughter being Natasha, I said, can I talk with her? And they said, well, yeah, if you want to, So, I mean, they're kind of shocked.
Sure.
So we sat at a long table, and, there's the director of the orphanage. I mean, there's probably 10 people around. And Natasha, I'm speaking to her through an interpreter. But at that point in time, just did my best as to say, we still want you, regardless of how you're reacting.
Yep. Did she have a reason, or was she just hurt?
Hurt, scared, frightened. All that, and so we met with both girls, and they both had to agree to it. And we met with both girls
because you didn't want to separate them.
No, we decided early on we didn't want to separate them. And
were they sisters?
Yeah, they were sisters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were sisters. And so, and Irina, of course, was chomping at the bit. I want to go. And we knew that Irina would surely succeed here. She would do well in Russia, but she would really succeed here. And we thought anyway, Natasha would have a better hope and chance here. Mm-hmm. And so we did it. We went back for the second trip to adopt them, and we brought them home. And I don't really know.
It's a whirlwind.
It's like, we were talking earlier about, crisis management. It was like every day was just a new day.
Yeah.
And if you got an idea and it doesn't work, you better have another idea about what you want to do.
Right. Plan 27.
And not just with them, but now with Roxanne. And granted, we're just 2 years out of, the death of the only son.
Yep.
And they've come from Russia. They've left everything. They don't speak English.
Could you make it any harder for yourself?
And right.
Yeah.
So there was this sense of like, okay, now what? It was very difficult for Roxanne.
So you brought him home at what age?
They were 12 and 14, 2004.
And you raised them here up until they were 18, 19? They took the
After about 3.5 years, things were very contentious with the younger one over a period of time, and we just reached to a point, she and I did, where it's like, I just said, you got to go.
Okay.
I've done everything I can, and it wasn't so much her and Roxanne. I mean, it was between her and me and her.
Okay.
I mean, at some point I had to say, kind of, this is our house. This is we've crossed the line much many times, and there needs to be order, and I'm going to establish order with or without you.
Yep.
And so she was almost 18, and she through the course of several months agreed to move up to Oregon to stay with some family up there, and she did, and eventually turned 18 in Oregon. And Irina stayed with us, and we had even some challenges with that. I mean, of course.
Sure.
But all that to be said, through it all, God is working in the midst of it, displaying the spirit of adoption. Yeah. And the power of adoption. And so in realizing that this Christian life we live, in my own mind, I thought, I want to have my own family. I want to have my own kids, my own flesh and blood. And so I have one. And then after we had Drew, Roxanne's like, I don't want to have any more kids. I want to just take care of Drew. And then when he passes, it's like, okay, continue to be, the mind of Christ and the face of Christ, even in this, because Ed, you were adopted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ed, you were grafted in as though someone abnormally born. Yep. God extended that to you. Why won't you extend that to other people? And so.
And where are they now? Like, what's going on with
Irina is married. She's been married 3 years. And she has a baby.
Oh, so you have a granddaughter.
Granddaughter, yeah.
Amazing.
So this story is,
Those are great, by the way. I have one.
yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
And brings us a lot of laughs. So we're proud of both girls.
Yeah.
Very proud of Irina, and still, stories to be told.
Sure, absolutely. So then it doesn't end there. Okay, so I'm going to stay along this theme.
Yeah.
Because it's incredibly helpful not only to me but the people who are watching and need to understand who God is and have the right perspective of God.
Yeah.
And understand that God loves them and has sent a rescuer and a savior for all of us. Incredibly powerful themes. As a musician, you're singing at churches, and you're kind of this beloved leader and this songwriter, and out of the blue, one day you're playing the guitar and your hand doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this is where the Parkinson's comes in.
Yeah. And I'll back it up maybe a little bit before that. Kind of a transformative moment in the hospital with Drew when we were praying for everybody. We get. And we should, it's praying for specifics,
Sure.
Okay, what's this procedure, what's that procedure? And it's like, do we pray for, Drew, okay, he needs a heart. Well, how do you pray for somebody to die, for your son can have, so I finally just said, I said, let's just, I told everybody, just pray for the glory of God to be displayed and shown. And as soon as we did that, things could not have gone worse in the hospital, but yet you could not have found a more deeper sense of the Spirit of God, even in the midst of all the challenges and trials. And so that, changed me in terms of how I pray and what I pray for, to see, okay, it's the glory of God that is most important. It's the glory of God in my life. It's the glory of God in this world. It's the glory of God. God is more concerned about his own glory and rightfully so.
Yes.
And so, Lord, okay, I won't be, help me to understand that, And so, and after that, there were moments with Drew where I would say I would be blessed by knowledge of God or wisdom of God that I hadn't had before.
Right.
And I would shun that away. I would turn away from God from that. And the response from God was, if you can't take blessings from the death of your son, how are you going to take blessings from the death of my son?
Wow.
And so I realized that there was a lot about God that I didn't understand. That the blessings from the death of Christ, from the death of your only son. And then I realized that I was like Peter when Peter goes to wash Jesus' feet. I'm like, not my feet, Lord. I'm gonna do this on my own. And so there was this awareness that ultimately God was involved in every single detail of everything that had happened. And for the first time, I was more aware of it, or I became aware of it, to a practical side where I thought, he really does love me. When he says, look at the sparrows and not one of them falls and I don't know about it. Yep. Consider the lilies of the field, not even Solomon in all of his days of wonder, clothed himself like this. And it's like, Ed, do you really believe that?
Right.
You know?
Those are the big questions. Do you really believe these words? And
and it's like, I do. And so so after Drew passed, I I was 40 and I did that thing that most wives don't like it when their husbands do and leave a really nice job. And I came home and I said, I'm going to be one of the few, the proud, the musician.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
She says,
high-paying musician.
Yeah. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I said, well, we're just going to kind of figure this out. You know? So I started teaching guitar with a group of 5 kids. I did a pilot program, and I said, if it goes good with you, then I'll start charging you. And it went well, and 5 became 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 50, 55, like 60 appointments a week for the better part of 14 years. But in the midst of that, towards the end of that 14-year period, about 6 years ago, I noticed a little twitch in my arm. And it was about a year later when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Okay. And so I was learning to, I was basically struggling and not realizing it, that I just was losing my ability to play guitar. And for a guitar teacher, that was kind of challenging. And so that really hurt. And it hurt bad because I didn't have a backup plan.
Right.
Because as a musician, that was my plan.
Sure.
You know, I'm gonna play music as my retirement. And so here I am again at the juncture of saying, I am at my wit's end here, Lord. You know, and I don't know that I can go through this, and I'm tired.
Yeah.
And my pastor at the time, when I was telling him I had Parkinson's, and I kept it to myself for the better part of a year and a half. I didn't want people to know. Right. But the pastor, I chose to tell my pastor, and the words out of his mouth were, "Glory be to God," and that was the reminder I needed. I thought
that was your thing, the very
glory
thing
to God.
that you say. Yeah.
Glory to God.
Yep.
So I'd always take Drew out, you know, to practice his pitching, and we'd always go through the scenario, you know, where I was the umpire, right, and the catcher, and so you know, invariably I wanted the base. There would be 2 outs, bases loaded, full count. You know, strike him out, you win. You walk ball 4, you walk in the run, and you
you're
lose.
the big loser.
Yeah, and the whole thing was to get him to the point of saying, you're at this point of like, you know,
one pitch, one choice,
that's
one
right.
thought.
That's
whatever
right.
happens.
That's right. And I'd always say, whatever you do,
glory to God.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Glory to God, and give me all you got.
Yeah. Throw the best thing you got. Yeah.
Even if you have to announce it.
Yeah.
Here comes the heater.
Yeah. Here it comes, man. That's all I got.
Yeah.
One last. Yeah.
And that's where I'm at. So all those times I'm talking to him, it's like now he's gone, and it's like, you know, how could I expect him to, you know, if I was going to say those words to him, how could I not live that out now in my own life?
Yeah. The very words you're using to minister him, God turns around to minister you.
Yeah. So it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But every day it's
so did you have to stop teaching, or could you? Or is there other ways to do that, or did you have to be hands on? And so did you?
I stopped. Yeah, I mean, I
you just didn't feel like you could give your best to the students, or is it just
no? That's a really good question. Yeah. I mean, part of my teaching was very selfish oriented in that I loved playing guitar.
Sure.
And I was getting, as a musician, you could keep
better
getting better.
As you teach, yeah.
I mean, I would teach sometimes for about 6 or 7 hours, and then I'd sit at my dining room table and play like another 2 hours, play something like hymns and stuff, you know. So when that started to go, when my own desire to play guitar started to feel, because of fall, I lost desire because I was losing my ability to play stuff. I'd go to play stuff that I could play, or even I just couldn't play it. It didn't sound as good.
Right.
And so the interest just lost. And at the same time, ministry opportunities started to pop up, more ministry opportunities that perhaps in the past I would have said no to because it meant stopping to play. But now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, Lord.
It's an open door you better go into. Yeah.
So now because of the Parkinson's, I would say because of the Parkinson's, I'm at where I'm at today. Yeah. And I still play on occasion, but no, it's not with, you know, it's nothing like it was before, but I'm okay with that.
So all the things, what you want to do now is like do a startup church.
Yeah, that's right.
High-paying gig.
Yeah. Roxanne, how do you feel about another?
What do you think about this?
Another church plant. Yeah. So I'm on staff with Spectrum Church Irvine. Okay. And we've been we meet catty corner to Costco Irvine, and we started in 2018, and Roxanne and I are in a good place. Yeah. I mean, you know, we've known you and Bob for a while in terms of churches, and even while at Coast Hills, I mean, there was calls to go out to minister to different churches. Absolutely. And so we love the church. I mean, the church, the global church, Roxanne,
the body of Christ.
We will be serving in the church, and you know, whether we're paid or not paid, whether you know whatever we can do. Yep. My title is leader of worship and community life. But as we were talking about, it's
2 jobs,
yeah,
5 real, 10.
Yeah.
For every job there's a 5
job
multiplicator.
title. That's right.
Yeah, 5x multiplier.
Yeah, we can't give you 10 titles. We'll give you 2 titles. Just know there's 5 titles underneath.
Exactly. Just know you're doing 10 jobs in your 2 titles.
Yeah.
It's okay. Here's we ask these questions just to have other people connect with you in a different way. I'm going to ask you just a few questions. Who's your favorite musical artist?
James Taylor.
Yeah. You can sense that. Why that? Why him?
Just self-contained.
Yeah.
Good story writer, good guitar player.
Good story writer. Yeah.
A guy that's had still relevant, I think, even today.
Yeah.
Other musicians like to be around him and play with him and support him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Do you have a favorite actor?
Favorite actor? Oh.
I always like to ask musicians that, and then actors, musicians.
That's a good one.
Past, present, or past or present.
Yeah.
See, those are the tough ones.
See? Yeah.
I could have switched to, do you have a top favorite movie? And then I'll say who's
a couple. Joe versus Volcano.
Okay, great. So Tom Hanks could be one of your favorite actors.
Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan may have been one of their first, Are You Joe?
Yeah.
Groundhog Day.
Okay. That's a great movie. Yeah. Those are fun. Those are both romantic comedy type things that fit into that thing. If you had an hour to spend with somebody, excluding Jesus, who would you spend an hour with?
Past, living, present.
Yeah. Whoever.
Probably maybe Barnabas.
Really?
Yeah. The son of encouragement.
Yes, you are very encouraging.
To get his viewpoint of what it was like to travel with Paul, what it was like to argue with Paul about whether who's going to take Mark or not, and what it was like to be there.
That's a great choice. That would be
on the sidelines, from his viewpoint.
That's
supporting, not playing first violin but playing second or third.
Yeah, being
what it's like from that viewpoint.
Yeah. We end the show with this thing called One Thing.
Okay.
You got about 2 minutes, under 2 minutes, to look in that camera and encourage the audience with one thing. It can be anything that you want to say.
Okay. One thing. Well, it doesn't matter what God is doing or has done in your life. God asks that you still be obedient to His call, to give Him glory through the process. So it doesn't matter what your family upbringing is. It doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what instrument you play or don't play. It doesn't matter what color your hair is or your eyes are. You were created for God's glory in the image of God to give Him glory. And so whether you've lost your only son or you have a dysfunctional family, or you are being rejected by your own kids, or you've suffered some type of loss that you think is insurmountable, look at it not as a means of complaining, but as Jesus said about the blind man, the man wasn't born blind because of anybody's sin. He was born blind so that the works of God could be displayed in his life. So consider every challenge that you have in your life as an opportunity for the work of God to be displayed in your life, and display it proud, and go big with the glory of God until you ultimately go home to be with God, to join all the other believers around at the throne of God to worship God forever and ever.
It's like Drew said, it's about winning. Can we add that one in? You win with Jesus.
Amen.
Thanks so much, man.
Love you guys.
Appreciate it. I love you too.
Thanks.
That's it for the Bub and Bob Show. Bobby, see you next time.
Bobby, thanks, man.
You betcha.
So good. So good.
When I tucked him into bed with the usual back rub and a touch on his face, he'd say, "How was your day? Was work okay? Tell me again what you do. Was your boss nice to you?" We'd talk for a while. He'd fall asleep. I'd start to leave. He'd say, "Dad, you forgot to pray." I'd feel ashamed. I'd drop to my knees and we'd pray. "Lord, thanks for this day and the things you've given, for jobs and clothes and home and food. Let your spirit fall upon my son. Let your angels guard him through the night. And put your word in his heart and mind and soul. Let him lead others to you. May he be a man of God. Make my son a man of God. The Lord answered my prayers, not the way I hoped. He took my son before we said goodbye. The Lord made him wise, and he made him strong. He made him a man of God. As he stood for Christ until the very end, now he's wearing a crown of righteousness. Oh, and I miss him now, but I know he's at home around the throne of God. As a man of God, Lord, thanks for this day and the things you've given, for jobs and clothes and home and food, and your Spirit who found a home in my son, and your angels that watched over him, and your word that lived in his heart and mind and soul. Thank you for hearing my prayer, to make my son a man of God. Yes, he is a man of God. Sometimes I go into his room, hoping to still find him there. I kneel at his bed like I did before. I offer up this prayer. Lord, take care of my son for now. Tell him I wish that I was there. Now let your Spirit fall upon me. May your angels protect and guard my life. And let your word fill my heart and mind and soul. Help me lead others to you. Help me be a man of God.